start the webinar. Sorry for 5 minutes delay we have. So, our topics today, you all aware about this cross-border relation between Nepal and China, particularly Tibet, you can say, in our border. I am Vijay Kant Karna, chairperson of this organization, a small research initiative by some of our colleagues, Center for Social Inclusion and Federalism. We have been working since 3.5 years and doing some research on federalism, inclusion, as well as the security policies, foreign affairs. So we have been working on this 3.5 years. First of all, I would like to welcome you all and the panelist who has been accepted our request. And I found a lot of our intellectuals, diplomats, foreign ministries officials, Nepal government top bureaucrats are here, and the MPs from our parliament are here. So I would like to welcome you all in this webinar. And our we have been working on both the border relation with Nepal, with India, and the border relation with Nepal and China. So last month we have done, in December we have done cross-border relations with Nepal and India. And this month we are organizing this cross-border relation with China. So we have we have done some research on this cross-border relations between Nepal and China. And the researcher, a young researcher, I would like to introduce some of the people who is the panelist. So our presenter, Ms. Shraddha Ghimre, she conducted a research on the topic cross-border relations between Nepal and India. She will be presenting her preliminary draft today. And at this webinar today, we will be discussing upon our findings backed by our own experience and knowledge. So this is the topics we are going to discuss. Before I go to the men introducing other panel, I would like to our communication expert Shanti Podel to just tell you a little bit about the technicalities of the program. Shanti.
Hello, everyone. So there's a small technicality. Sorry, there's a small technicality that is involved in this meeting. Nobody will be able to unmute themselves. And thereby, panelists, if you have something very important to tell me, kindly direct your message directly to me or my colleague Shraddha. If you have any queries to raise, and please feel free to use the Zoom chat to address any queries related to the topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Prashanti. So now I would like to introduce our panelists. So we have two members of parliament who are the member of Foreign Affairs Committee of House of Representatives. So I would like to introduce you Mr. Dibya Rajbhandari, who is the member of House of Representatives of the Federal Parliament and also member of the Foreign Affairs Committee in Parliament. Rajbhandari is a senior leader of the Nepali Congress, and he has been more than 4 decades has been active in the social and political life. We have another speaker, Honorable Dr. Deepak Bhatta, who is the member of House of Representatives of the Federal Parliament and member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Dr. Bhatt He is a coordinator of subcommittee for the recommendation of new foreign policy. And he is the founding chairperson of Nepal Center for Security Governance. Dr. Bhatt holds PhD degree from the School of International Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Bhatt is also a visiting fellow at Tribhuvan University Institute of Crisis Management, and he is well-known expert on the security and strategy. We have another speaker who is a good friend of mine, Professor Achyut Wagle, is a noted economist, journalist, and the present associate dean at the Kathmandu University School of Management. He holds PhD in economics from the Indian Institute of Technology, Kanpur, MSc in economics from the University of Birmingham, UK, and MA from Tribhuvan University, Nepal. He also holds several important public positions, like the advisor to the Prime Minister of Nepal and advisor to the government of Nepal, governor of Nepal Rastra Bank, central bank of the country, among others. Our next speaker, Avasana Pandey, is an assistant professor at Tribhuvan University Department of International Relations and Diplomacy, where I belong. So she is my colleague at the university. She also works as the program manager at the Center for Investigative Journalism, Nepal. Previously, Avasana Pandey was the op editor at the Kathmandu Post. She writes frequently on politics, and her writing have been published in Foreign Policy, South Asia Voices, and the Kathmandu Post. So she holds a Master in International Relations from Jawaharlal Nehru University. We have our presenter, Sudha Himire. She has done her graduation from one of the prestigious University of College of Delhi University, Lady Sri Ram. So these are our speaker today. And we have another speaker, SESIP Nepal Research Director, Ajay Bhadra Khanal, who is also providing some his insight today. Mr. Khanal is a journalist, and he has been long time a editor of the Himalayan Times, and he has been working since 25 years in journalism and research. And he holds a Master in English language from Tribhuvan University and MS from America in social anthropology. And he is the research director at the moment in the SESIP Nepal. So thank you very much for this. With introduction, I would like to request Sudha to present his research. Sudha.
Thank you, Vijay sir, for the warm welcome, and a very good afternoon to everyone here. And thank you for coming to our webinar on Nepal-China cross-border relations. I'm proceeding forward to share my screen so we can start with the small presentation on the research that we recently completed. As Vijay sir mentioned, as Vijay sir mentioned, the topic of our research was Nepal-China cross-border relation, where we try to understand the changing dynamics in the northern districts of Nepal, the relation that it has with Tibet, which was prior to the 1956 phase and after that. So going a little into the historical perspective, Nepal and China have had diplomatic ties, economic ties, and cultural ties that dates back to the 7th century. But it was only in the 17th century, under the leadership of the then king, Pratap Malla, that Kathmandu court signed a peace and trade treaty with Tibet, which allowed Kathmandu court to establish trading houses in Lhasa of Tibet. Because of this treaty, trade culture and marriage ties between Nepal and Tibet greatly flourished. We had communities of Vajrachara and Shakya of Kathmandu, as well as Tamang and Lamas of Rasua, establishing their families in Nyalam and Giron County of Tibet. But post 1951, Nepal readjusted her diplomatic and economic ties with a northern neighbor by establishing more formal ties with the People's Republic of China and adhering to its One China policy. In today's context, Nepal's bilateral engagements, her relations in China has expanded beyond conventional cross-border dynamics and engagement. There's more revived interest in state-to-state level engagements rather than local level engagements, which we were seeing in the years previous to 2008 and 2015. Right now, there has been revived interest in physical infrastructure, foreign direct investment, road and railways connectivity under the larger Belt and Road Initiative umbrella, and development of Nepal's northern border districts. Moreover, we have also discovered that China has been aggressively tracking its local engagements via the China International Development Cooperation Agency. And it is also intensifying implementation of projects under BRI, particularly the Trans-Himalaya Connectivity Network, which aims to connect China with Eurasia using Nepal as a transit hub. However, even with so many, just a second. However, Tibet still remains a vital component for China in its cross-border engagements with Nepal, as in China is still very hesitant to develop Nepal's northern border districts because it fears the consolidation of pro-Tibetan sympathizers along the border that it shares with Nepal. Also, decades of exclusion from Nepal's central government from developing the northern border district has left this region largely underdeveloped, with the residents of northern border district facing the biggest problems. In this scenario, we started this study, and the major objective of the study was to assess the impact of border management and border security on livelihoods of people, to generate knowledge about China's strategic concerns along Nepal's northern border districts, to identify problems and disputes in Nepal's cross-border relation with China, and to assess the feasibility and future of projects under the larger BRI umbrella. Before we started the project or the study, we looked more into the significance of what the study could bring forward. In this context, we have identified that China's engagement in Nepal's northern border districts are shaped largely by China's national security concerns, as in any future trans-border connectivity project needs to align with China's security interests to be feasible or to be implemented in Nepal. Moreover, China also prioritizes border security over flow of people, ideas, culture, or goods with regards to its friendship with Nepal. Also, China's tight control of cross-border flows has had the biggest impact on poor and vulnerable groups who reside in Nepal's northern border districts. And another thing that we have noticed in the past few years is that Nepal government has always tried to downplay problematic issues that it has with China. And China has also always adhered by saying that it doesn't have any issues with Nepal. Similarly, China's security and surveillance needs is also generating multiple local dynamics, which is having impact on the livelihoods, right, and freedom of local people who reside in Nepal's northern border districts. The research methodology that we adopted for this research included desk research, a qualitative survey, which included field visit to 5 northern border districts of Nepal. We also conducted household survey in these districts, and it was followed by Kathmandu interviews with relevant stakeholders and experts. And later we analyzed the data to extrapolate the final report. Now, heading towards the key finding of our research, we have discovered that Nepal and China have signed a series of border agreements and protocols, including the Agreement on Economic Aid, which was signed in 1956. The significance of this agreement was that it replaced the Thapathali Agreement of 1856. This agreement also included a visa regulation which allowed border residents to travel up to only 30 kilometers inside the Tibetan Autonomous Region of China. Later in 1960, Nepal and China also signed the Friendship Treaty, and they signed the Boundary Treaty, which started the process of demarcating the border between Nepal and China. Fast forward to 2011, Nepal and China signed a comprehensive security pact, and they also signed an exchange of information on real-time basis in 2012. Later, in 2013, a border security strategy was also adopted to manage border security and management between the two nations. Now, talking more about border management security, we have identified that from Nepal's side, the border is managed with a coordinated force consisting of Nepali Armed Police Force, or also referred to as the Sasastra Bal, Nepali Police, also referred to as Nepal Prahari, and Nepal Army. Similarly, in the border outpost, we also have representatives from Immigration Office and Custom Offices who look more into the mobility of people and trade of goods. We also discovered that there is a joint border management mechanism between security personnel from Nepal and China. And the people representing the Chinese security personnel consist of mixed paramilitary from the People's Armed Police. The border pillar also undergoes a joint surveillance, which consists of long-range platoons from representatives of security forces of both Nepal and China. And the medium of communication between security personnel is WeChat. Now, another thing that we discovered is that although the geographical structure of Nepal and China has assisted and has been credited to lower cross-border crimes and trafficking, the structure has also impeded border management. And also because Nepal has limited surveillance tools and equipments, it's very difficult for the Nepali Armed Police Force to go on border patrolling and pillar patrolling. In the next slide, we discover more about the flow of people, idea, and goods, where we identified that prior to 1956, goods between Nepal and Tibet were traded in a supermarket referred to as Konshi, and this led to the establishment of a barter system of trade. During those days, Nepal exported green peas, fresh vegetables, telecotton, liquor, and cigarettes, while it imported iron rods, metals, and refined cotton. As I had said earlier, there was also a well-established community of Shakyas and Vajracharis of Kathmandu at Nalam County and Tamangs and Lama at Gidong County. Similarly, the visa regulation also allowed people to go up to 30 kilometers within Tibet and allowed Tibetan people to come within 30 kilometers of Nepal. In the next slide, we talk more about cross-border mobility issues, which consist of smuggling. Now, this was verified through the key informant interviews that we conducted in the northern border districts that traditional and mountainous herbs, television, gold, pashmina, and red sandalwood are highly smuggled along the border between Nepal and China. Similarly, poor and unemployed border residents are also trafficked into manual labor, and Nepali women into sexual activities and prostitution. There's also a heavy restriction on religious mobility, which restricts people, particularly of Sherpa and Lama descent, to go up to Tibet because of Tibetan sensitivities. Now, talking more about the present context, due to COVID-19 pandemic, the border has been completely closed since 2020, and no joint border management meeting has taken place. The effect of this can be largely seen in the customs that is there at Rashwagadi and Tatopani, where the customs officials revealed to us that a new method known as hook and drop method has been adopted. And because the method is very cumbersome and time-taking, barely 3 to 5 trucks are entering Nepal on a daily basis. Also, because of the border closure, the border residents have been facing a loss of 20 to 30 lakhs Nepalese rupees per annum. In this slide, we talk more about Chinese foreign aid and assistance. Back in 1963, Zhao and Lai had laid 8 principles governing China's aid policy. And proletarian internationalism was the guiding principle of China's foreign policy in those days. However, in today's context, China's aid is often in the form of gratis or loans, and the terms and conditions are always more favorable to China. Moreover, China has also been using foreign aid as a tool in domestic armory to compete with Western powers, to maintain an attitude of moral superiority, as well as to assist its own revolutionary movement. In Nepal's context, it can be said that Chinese foreign aid and assistance has been used to diminish India's influence in Nepal and gain political influence in Nepal's northern borders. In this slide, we look more into the foreign aid and assistance that Nepal's northern border districts has been receiving from China, which includes the development of 15 prototype projects, as well as FDI investments in Nepal's northern border districts. China has been identified as the major investor in Nepal's northern border districts between 2017-18 to 2020-21. The largest investment has been noticed in Rasua, Sankhua Sabha, Solungkhubu, and Manang districts. And the investments are largely in development of hydroelectricity power plants, brick industry, vegetable and fruits farming, steel manufacturing, and construction activities. On a more local level, we also identified that Nepal's bordering districts have received 3 million Nepalese rupees for the development of their local administrative body from China. China has also been constructing dry ports at the six border points that was agreed upon in the Transit Transport Agreement that Nepal and China signed back in 2016. Another very interesting fact that was discovered from a field visit was that Chinese funded schools are operating in the northern border districts of Nepal, which receives Chinese study materials from Chinese embassy in Kathmandu. There is also aid anomalies that exist in the Chinese aid that Nepal is receiving. This was disclosed to us from the customs offices that is currently operating in Rasua and Tatopani. According to the officials there, the Tibetan government is sending relief materials to Nepal as and when necessary, and this is totally against the modalities under International Development Corporation Mobilization Policy that was issued by Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Kathmandu. According to this policy, any humanitarian aid that Nepal receives is to be sent to Ministry of Finance for tax exemption, after which the ministry sends it to the concerned district and areas to be utilized. However, Chinese authorities have been donating aid in the name of humanitarian aid, irrespective of this protocol, in geopolitically strategic areas, including Humla, Kimanthangka, and Olongchungola, even during peak COVID-19 pandemic phases. In this slide, we talk more about the issues and concerns that has risen in Nepal-China's border dynamics, which mainly revolves around land and pillar discrepancies and Tibetan sensitivities. The major loss of land has been observed along the districts of Sankhua Sabha, Rasua, and Sindhupalchok, mainly because of construction activities. Moreover, in terms of border pillars, the National Investigation Department had identified 15 border pillars in the districts of Humla, and the household surveys that we conducted with the residents of Humla has verified that pillars have been shifted with land encroachment intentions. Moreover, in the same district, China has attempted to construct a 145 meters permanent canal inside the Nepali territory. Similarly, in the district of Dolakha, from household survey, it was revealed to us that out of the 7 pillars that the district shares with China, pillar number 60 is missing, with China hesitating in answering to this disappearance. Now, in terms of Tibetan sensitivities, it's a well-known fact that the Chinese government has a history of suppressing religious and political movements for its own gains. Prior to 2008, Kathmandu was a major center of pro-Tibetan political activities. Moreover, 3 Tibetan monks have self-immolated themselves with Tibetan agenda in Nepal. This event led to heavy political pressure to the Nepali government from China, and post-2008, Nepal government has tried to curb any Tibetan demonstrations inside its territory. In our last slide, we talk more about the northern borderland connectivity, in which China has been aggressively pushing for trans-Himalaya multi-dimensional connectivity network to connect itself with Central Asia and the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor using Nepal as a transit hub. The flagship project under this connectivity is the train link connecting Kedung via Rastra to Kathmandu and onward to Pokhara and Lumbini in Nepal. Moreover, 3 north-south connecting corridors in Nepal, namely Kushi, Gandaki, and Karnali Economic Corridor, is also under this connectivity project. While the Memorandum of Understanding was signed in 2008 with another Memorandum of Understanding for Feasibility Studies signed in 2019, no progress has been noticed for this connectivity network given the COVID-19 crisis and the political uncertainties in Nepal. Similarly, the funding modality is also not clear, as Nepal is negotiating for grants while China is insisting on loans. Similarly, the significance of investing such a heavy amount in a trans-boundary railway that terminates in Nepal is also a huge question among experts and other experts and bureaucrats in Nepal. And the successful execution of the project is also in a limbo given the geological and engineering complications that exist between Nepal and China. As now we approach towards the end of the presentation, I would like to speak on the analysis and conclusions that we have drawn. While China's increasing interest and engagement in Nepal has increased economic and development opportunities for Nepal and has ensured geopolitical wins for former, Kathmandu has always failed in prioritizing the northern border districts from its growth trajectory. Moreover, trade and transit points along Nepal and China borders are also largely absent in the national development discourse, with only 2 border points that are operating, that too marginally. Similarly, pro-Tibetan activities alongside the strenuous geographical structure and terrain that exist in Nepal-China border and the fear of COVID-19 pandemic has always hampered the 2 nations in border security and management. Due to this reason, joint border security mechanism and protocols have often failed in regulating cross-border dynamics, giving rise to smuggling of goods, animals, and in some cases, even people. Weak immigration mechanism has allowed trafficking of labor and women into Tibet into abusive and unsafe work activities. And the closure on cross-border trade and exchanges due to COVID-19 pandemic has left local border residents to enter into involuntary unemployment. USA and India have also been accelerating their presence in Nepal's northern districts with heavy investment in hydroelectricity plants in Taplejung and Sindhupalchok. And lastly, the discrimination and exclusion and restrictions on freedom of movement of Sherpa and Lama descent along Nepal-China border has hampered them from enjoying their human rights. As recommendations and way forward that we suggest, we would like to say that we need to build stronger border security and management mechanism by increasing the presence of security personnel, update boundary agreements and boundary demarcation and other boundary protocols, advocate joint patrolling of border between Nepali Armed Police Force and Chinese Armed Police Force, introduce modern custom rules and protocol to digitize custom procedures to reduce cross-border illegal operation, develop consistency within the special citizenship card provisions for border residents, increase the presence of central government at strategic border points between Nepal and China, and increase women leadership in local government for better representation and better security of women. Similarly, we need to establish clear modalities for projects under the BRI initiative and negotiate strongly for the proper implementation of protocols under the Transit and Trade Agreement, expand and modernize infrastructural connectivity to northern border districts, attract Chinese private investors in infrastructural development of Nepal, and most importantly, avoid future border blockade on transit points via stronger lobbying by our bureaucracy and government, recognize a special cross-border relation of people living in bordering districts before introducing any border management practice, and introduce gender-friendly laws on cross-border employment to encourage women, facilitate their education and employment opportunities. Thank you. And here is where I end the presentation.
Thank you, Sardar. Thank you very much. Before going to the other panelists, I would like to just inform you that Mr. Madhu Raman Acharya was agreed to speak on this panel, but unfortunately he has been affected by the COVID and he couldn't manage. Even this morning we have communicated with him and his health is not in that condition to speak in the panel. So from his side, he apologized his absence. Then there are two important things that Sardha mentioned here. The northern borders, the migration, due to lack of infrastructure and opportunity, the people from the northern side migrating to the Tarai or the mid-hill. So day before yesterday, our census has published its preliminary report on the census, which supported Sardha argument. So with this, I would like to request our panelists to comment on Sardha and their own views. So I'm going first to ask Assistant Professor of Tribhuvan University, Department of International Relations and Diplomacy, Ms. Avasana Pandey. So Avasana ji, it's your platform is yours.
Thank you, Vijayji. And first of all, I must congratulate Shraddha for bringing out such an insightful report. It's very inspiring when young people like Shraddha take up on these kind of researches and then try to intervene in policy discourses and all of that. And I did go through your report, and then I did go through your presentation here as well. Indeed, whatever you've mentioned about all these the border issues that we've been having with China, it's actually very interesting to see. I think for me, what I really wanted to think about when I read your report was I wanted to sort of see the historical trajectory, right, when it comes to border relations with China or even Nepal's relationship with China, right? What had happened in the past and what are we seeing right now, right? So what was the history, and is there a continuation of that history or not, right? And I think one thing that we must mention is the kind of foreign policy change that China itself has undergone, right? So before 1960s, right, China actually, and right now we have a lot of outstanding border issues with China, right? And they've not been solved. It's true that, it takes a lot of time for us to solve border issues, but it's not like they had never been solved before. In the early 1960s, when we had brought border issues with China, they were solved. Like, China had outstanding border issues with Nepal, Pakistan, Afghanistan, India, right? With India, it could not solve, but with all these other countries, the border issue was solved. And why was that? That was because China was following a policy of China's foreign policy was consisted of conciliatory policy, right? So it wanted to sort of establish good relationships with its neighbors, right? And that's why outstanding border issues at that time could be solved easily. But I think when the Cultural Revolution happened in China, right? So on the eve of that actually Cultural Revolution, China changed its foreign policy from a conciliatory policy to a confrontationist policy, right? So it sort of became more aggressive in its stance, in its dealing with the with its neighboring countries, right? So I think what we're seeing right now in our case, when we see borders not being open, when we see tightened security, when we see all the other points that you mentioned, it's because I think for me, I see this as a part of China's confrontationist policy. And China does not really say this out openly, but it is an example of that, right? So when China opened its policy, so what China did is up to them. And what we're doing, I think it's also important that we look at what is our, how are we engaging with China on this whole border issue, right? On the idea of connectivity. So like you said, trade with Tibet was very important, right? So I think for us, Nepal's relationship with China is based on two fronts, right? One is the commerce and one is political balance, right? So that's how we're sort of, we're trading our relationship with China, and your report talks about all of that. I think the only thing that I would like is if you would have mentioned about this whole trajectory of what happened in the past as to like how a relationship with border was administered with China in the past, because initially when China did the border agreement with us, its intention was to only have minimal engagement with Nepal and secure its security in relation to Tibet, right? But over time, China is becoming more politically intrusive in Nepal, which it was not before, right? So now its interest in the border is not just related to it having a security guarantee of the Tibetan area, right? There are other things like you mentioned, there are cultural aspects, right? There are like China is increasingly wanting to project itself as a cultural ally of Nepal, right? It's rebuilding houses after the earthquake. Then there is like, it's, rebuilding our cultural heritages, building schools. Like you said, there are a lot of Confucian centers all around the country, not just, in some parts, like you mentioned, right? So there is a multidimensional power aspect here. And I think it's important that we see the border issue also from all of those eyes. Border is one frontier that we could be looking at, right? But there are other frontiers too. And all of these are interrelated, interlocked. And I think a nuanced understanding of all of this will help us have a better understanding of the Nepal-China relation and the border issues that we have with each other right now. I think those are my points, Ambassador Karni.
Thank you, Avasana ji, for your very nice comments on the issues during this course. We'll again come to you. So now, I've done a little bit some up down during this moderation. So I would like our research director, Mr. Ajay Bhadra Khanal, to speak few insights on the topics. Ajay ji. Unmute Garnus. Unmute Garnus.
Thank you, Bijay sir. And thank you, Shraddha, for the excellent presentation. And thank you to Avasana for your remarks. Here, I would like to briefly make 4 points in the form of questions. So far, existing discussion on Nepal-China relationship, as we know, is more about rhetoric of friendship and less about substance. And we need to add more substance to our discussions. And Shraddha's presentation and research she did with her team in the last 3-4 months, visiting several parts of the northern border, is a contribution to that issue. And I would like to make brief comments on that regarding the context in which this whole research is taking place. The first is regarding trade and transit. As we know, there has been a virtual blockade of the transit points, and Nepal has not been able to use the transit since 2015. And even now, there is one-way control of the transit points. And the fact that this is important is we started talking about access to the seaports after the 2015 blockade, and especially in the context of anti-India nationalism, we started talking about Nepal's right to seaports, and Nepal started this process of accessing China's seaports. But so far, this has not become a reality. And also, the people most affected by this are the residents, the local inhabitants living along the northern border, who have been traditionally supplementing their livelihood by accessing China. And should we continue to talk about this? What happened to the discourse of Nepal's rights to access of seaports? Do we need to continue talking about it? So that's the first question. The second question is about trade promotion and import substitution, which are national priorities. And how to benefit from connectivity with China is a big challenge in this context, and especially when Nepal is not having an opportunity to export to China. The third question concerns development cooperation and investments, which is one of the biggest prospects of engaging with China. However, investments in infrastructure and economic sectors needs a closer look, both In terms of the commitments made by China, we've seen commitments of almost $1 billion and agreements reaching to $2-3 billion, the prospect of agreements. But in actual terms, the disbursements since 2015 have been very little, about $400 million only. So in terms of the commitments and the actual disbursements, it has been decreasing in the last 4 or 5 years since 2015. And on top of that, state-to-state engagement is at a virtual standstill. We see that the Chinese ambassador is holding talks with political leaders, but state-to-state engagement has come to a standstill, although private sector FDI commitments from China is increasing. So for example, according to the aid disbursement, aid management information system in the finance ministry, from 2015 until 2021, the disbursement was about $420 million. And all of these were commitments made by China before 2015. And of the commitments made after 2015, we've seen only $18 million worth of assistance come to Nepal. So this shows that Chinese assistance to Nepal has remained stagnant since 2015 and not after there was a government, as is widely claimed. But most importantly, the fourth point is, are we entering a phase where the element of fear is becoming the most dominant element in Nepal-China relationships? Let me give some examples. The Home Ministry sent a team to study the border dispute in Humla districts, and the report says that when they were talking to the local people were extremely fearful of the government having formed this committee because they were afraid that China might, react, and it might, sort of take some action that would be harmful, like limiting access to the border, like limiting access to the Chinese market. They were afraid of Chinese retribution, and this is seen also in the Chinese government's letter to the Nepali Congress, the way in which China is forcing political parties to take action against MPs who are favorable to Dalai Lama or who speak in favor of Tibetans. But most importantly, also Nepali civil society and media are unable to speak out on issues of national interest. They are unwilling to go beyond this rhetoric of friendship and talk about the real substantial issues that affects Nepal-China relations. So are we entering a phase where the element of fear is becoming dominant in Nepal-China relationship? Thank you.
Thank you, Ajayji. Just to mention the Shraddha presentation, yesterday our infrastructure ministry and the China's concerned ministry has a webinar on the railway feasibility study report. And now the Chinese government asked for 42 months more for the completing of the study of the railway. I have seen today this news in the local media. So, but this was signed between the President Xi visit to Kathmandu in 2019. And this was already 2 years. So it needs almost 6 years to complete this feasibility study of Kerim to Kathmandu railway. Now I'm coming to the another panelist. We have Honorable Member of Parliament, Dr. Deepak Prakash. We have another panelist, Associate Dean of Kathmandu University, Dr. Achyut Wagle. So Achyutji, floor is yours.
Thank you, Vijayji. It is like meeting a lot of old friends that this is a great opportunity to be together. Listening to the conversation and presentations, I think the earlier speakers have taken a very comprehensive view. So I think way beyond the cross-border issues. let me take a very realistic view, and their presentation has made much easier for me to, because most of the things, important points have already been covered. So first of all, border issue between the bordering countries is nothing new. It is all over. The critical point here is how realistically the such disputes are taken up and resolved, and how differently these things are handled between China and Nepal. That is the very critical aspect, I think. The international border is a not very deterministic idea in terms of physical and political sense. It is not only a line. Even if we look at the preamble of Nepal-China border treaty, it has very specifically said interesting things. It said all the disputes or differences regarding the border would be resolved through mutual consultations and dialogue. That is section 4 of the treaty, I guess. In the preamble itself, the resolution of Nepal-China border issue not only helps to resolve the potential differences between two friendly countries, but also it contributes to enhance the Asian and the world peace. It is written in the treaty. So if you try to put these things in the current perspective, are we heading towards that lofty kind of promises and idea we promised about? That's one thing. And as earlier presenters have already said, there are 3 very key aspects involved in Nepal-China cross-border issue. One is definitely an issue of national security. As Ajay Vadraji mentioned about an element of fear is entering into the discourse. If you see through the Chinese narrative, everything, the blockade, the virtual blockade of the transshipments of the goods, and the other economic cross-border activities, the movement of the people, particularly of the Tibetan origin crossing towards the Chinese side, is linked to the national security. Then comes the regional geopolitics, whether we like it or not. Nepal has been at the vortex of geopolitical competition. We must accept that. And perhaps very tangible and overall, most overarching is economic interests and economic interactions. These are with any country. But when it comes to Nepal-China border relations, we have got very interesting specific relationships, particularly related to the grassland, rangeland, the rights of the pastoralists, and the transhuman activities. That is very critical for the survival of the border people. One of the very important aspects, if you look at it, as we said, there is always a human angle in cross-border relations. In fact, not any international border is the end point of several things like culture, tradition, languages, ecological system, like that we share the Himalayan climate across China. So these are the continuums. If you stop the possibility of interaction between those continuums, the problems arise. It is not very recent phenomena. Somebody mentioned the Hapathali Treaty of 1856. Since Hapathali Treaty, when there was the state of Tibet was in existence, the shadow of Beijing in terms of Nepal's relationship with Tibet then, and when China annexed Tibet in early 1950s. And the shadow of Beijing has been very, very overarching in terms of the cultural things also. Somebody mentions the Confucius Center. We hardly have the Tibetan Study Center in a state. So that is also a shadow. So that is one very critical point. We are not being able to understand this continuum, and we largely also fail to bring in the real discourse of this realistic views what is happening at the cross-border level. Like even now we find very fascinating to talk about the Chinese strategies on BRI, railroads, but what is actually happening on the ground across the border? One very interesting study done by Ishimod, including Nepali scholars Srijana Joshi and Neha Bist in 2016, I found out that across the border, bordering districts, there were about 40,000 acts that used to enjoy their right to pasture across the border. It sounds very simple for us sitting in a city talking in English, but think about the livelihood of those people there. So, and another part is the management of the border. What is actually happening practically is there are two very worrisome symptoms. As a treaty said, there would be a periodic review of what happens across the border. That happened in 1979, in 88, and we also constituted a review committee in 2006, which never has come up with the report. What actually happening is, instead of objective and evidence-based diplomacy, we are jumping into the preemptive diplomacy. Somebody mentioned the probe committee made under a joint secretary of the Home Ministry. But what actually happened is, before the probe committee came out with the final report, the Foreign Ministry of Nepal came out with a statement saying that there is no border encroachment. Before that committee actually could present the report, that was in September 2020 that everybody saw. Even few days ago, I saw a statement from the Chinese embassy claiming that there is no border dispute. The way we conduct cross-border diplomacy. When the questions are raised, it is fantastic to find out the evidences, not being passionate, dispassionately finding out the evidences, what has happened. So there are the people at the local level claiming that the pillar number 12 were reconstructed and pillar 11 in Hilsa, Limi area was not found. So what is the harm in conducting a joint kind of surveys in the spirit of our trade treaty? I'm very much in line with Khanal's observation that these things are not happening on the ground. So this is the real issue. Second issue is we have created a lot of instruments. Even the name of the instruments is very fancy, promoting Nepalese trade and investment relation with China, agreement on road transportation, agreement on the trade and other related matters, the trade and transit. Even only during the time of KP Oli, we cited about 20 different instruments. So it is. So what is happening? What is the status of those instruments? Are those instruments only for the publicity, or do they get due consideration in implementation? And it is the right time we should ask. And I don't know how long would you allow me to speak, Ambassador Karn, but the data. The data shows that the trade relation with China is increasingly becoming one-sided. It is official data. For last 3 consecutive years, the import-export ratio between China and Nepal is 1:100. When Nepal exported 2 billion rupees worth of goods, it imported 200 billion worth of goods from China, despite the problems at the border points. I'm talking in round figures, but these are serious concerns. In paper, we have got the very fantastic arrangement. China has provided free access to about 8,000 goods produced in Nepal. But the figures, the actual transactions suggest something else. So, not being my suggestion would be we need to look into three key aspects. I would say. It is high time we reviewed the instruments, the agreements, protocols we sign, review the status of their implementation. That is one critical aspect. Second, if we do not stop the preemptive diplomacy, I would not even like to call it a diplomacy. There are so many diplomats who have been in practice. I see present here. So if there are issues, we can only have three approaches. We must be dispassionate. We cannot be swayed away by the emotions, whatever it may be, the ultra-nationalism, no nationalism, India bashing nationalism, China bashing nationalism. This is Nepal and we must be objective on it. Second, we must believe in the data. We must believe in the data, and the Chinese cannot brush it aside. They must be able to answer if they are only allowing 5 containers of goods per day, even during the heightened crisis and scarcity in Nepali market. That is, and we have not been able to present the data. Last year, I was told about 1,400 containers of goods were rotten on the other side of Nepali borders because the borders were not open, even during the heightened crisis, humanitarian-like crisis. Is that the friendly behavior? So we need to question that. Another issue, I think, is on when we are trying to look at the transit. When we talk about the cross-border relations, cross-border trade, we are talking about 2 types of trades. One is the trade of the goods that are produced in China, which is very heavy. And very ironically, I would say paradoxically, most of the goods that China sells does not come through the on-land border points across Nepal. So they come via Calcutta or Visakhapatnam port. So that is also a paradox I would not like to comment. As third, the third element in the trade is the trade of goods of the third country products, the transit used by Nepali traders, exporters and importers via China. Can China be a good friend to facilitate that? So that is another point. So now let me go to the final point that I wanted to make it. It is high time that we look into the cross-border relations. I'm just focusing on not the entire gamut of Nepal-China relation. It has got the very, very broad canvas, and we can talk for hours on that. But we need to look into the management of the cross-border relations in the changing context, particularly in terms of the connectivity, connectivity of the communication, roads and transport. Some aspect like road has been we discussed, but the short distance connectivity, few kilometers of road across the Tibet is helping, and it is also creating new sense of new sense of relationship, I would say. That may sound very vague. What I'm trying to say is, okay, there has been some trade facilitation, but Are we able to increase our export, or those roads have also been only instrumental in increasing imports? So that is one on the connectivity. Another is related to technology. Okay, the richer countries like China have got a greater access to technology like drones and everything. So how do we manage that? But if you look from our perspective, we have assigned the chief district officers of the bordering districts to look into the border issues as well. But neither they are oriented before they are posted. Very unfortunately, the only junior level bureaucrats, not even officers, non-gazetted officers, remain in the district administration officer of the remote districts. And then there is a clear mismatch in handling very sensitive issues, taking right decisions, even observing the pillars that are said to be destroyed, dismantled, disappeared, whatever. So we need to look into entirely new, look into entirely new strategy, and we probably need to implement that. Thank you. I will stop there. I see Karnaji signaling. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wagle, for your nice and very comprehensive remarks on the border. And you rightly mentioned about the border, how our, which Sardar also mentioned, very junior officials are assigned to do all the things, and there is a less coordination among the different government mechanism in the border. Recently, government of Nepal, I think the last year, has assigned Nepal Army to develop a Department of Border, I mean that Sima Vyavasthapan Vibhag something. So the Nepal Army is also involved at the moment in the border. We hope that during the course of time, the government of Nepal has a particular special package or the infrastructure as well as border management to enrich and enhance the border management. Now I'm coming to the another speaker, who is a member of parliament. So I would like to request Honorable Member of Parliament, Dr. Deepak Prakash Bhatta, to kindly provide his comments and opinion on the topics. Dr. Bhatta, platform is yours.
Thank you, Ambassador Vijay. Thank you, Sesif, for organizing this very important webinar on very pertinent issue of Nepal's cross-border relations with China. In fact, very intrinsic and very in-depth presentation has been made by presenter at the beginning, and followed by very rich comments regarding Nepal-China relations and broadening sense and specific dimensions also. And thank you, Ajayji, as you have made more clear how this discourse and the debate should go, and the questions should be framed, the problems and then the solutions should be discussed at these kind of forums. So from my side, what I see that we have gone through a long history of bilateral relations since 1960, peace and friendship treaty, and then border agreement, and then protocols, and of course the long process of cooperation, aid, and all these dimensions of the immediate neighbors. But at the same time, while looking from the Nepali perspective, the interrelations or interface between these two countries has remained a very in-depth or more, like friendly in broader sense. And what I see is sometimes we have seen in the recent past also that in Namka, that is Humla, the Limi border issue in recent past, and different positions and questions have been raised by politicians, parliamentarian or provincial assembly members, and then government have set up a study group on the border issue. So what I think is we have a proper mechanism of solving the border dispute or the problems, which is related or like established under the leadership of the Director General of the Survey Department and his team. Like the team of the department is working on the border issues in all the international borders on the northern side or in the southern side, or the west or east side, like alongside with the India or in the China. So regarding the particular the border issue or any issue, it comes in the surface, then at the beginning it can be discussed at the regular border settlement or the like boundary settlement mechanism. So better we must activate that in and then after it can be like handled with such kind of like the mechanisms which was led by Joint Secretary General in the recent past and his team. So but I mean we have seen that before submitting the report, as Professor Wagle was mentioning, like the ministry or officials or the politicians are speaking more on all this. So this and then in the recent time we have also seen that like how our Ministry of Foreign Affairs is working. Like 3 ambassadors have been appointed, like addressing immediate neighbors' concerns on the ambassadorial appointments is one issue that from as a parliamentarian I have been seen neglecting or ignoring immediate neighbors' concern and our concerns also, because it's we must give the top priority to our national interests. If that is so, then in this pandemic, in this situation, when we are like when we look at our trade, bilateral trade, as Professor Wagle was mentioning just before, that how we should handle this trade deficit. If that is so, then we must conduct our foreign policy and our diplomacy in a that with that proper system and with the timely initiatives and the interventions if needed. So interrelations or regular setup or the regular ministerial or the government works maybe are under progress, but like having proper person in proper place or like having mission and remaining vacant for a long time doesn't give a good sense. Then onwards like at the same time it will hamper somewhere the good relationships. And as from my side, what I have seen that the education and the academic institutions in China are luring the Nepali students, and not only on the medical sector but engineering and in many areas. What we have seen in the recent, not only in the Beijing but in the Guangzhou, Sichuan, in other areas or the other universities, or the many universities in the China are attracting Nepali students. So, and in the whole academics or like education system, they have been rapidly attending the international like the attention, or these things are happening, and many students are going for a study there. And still we are looking like in our context what our universities, academic institutions are, how they want to cope, or they want to like have want to have relations in academia in a longer term. I am talking about not for today's if we seek results tomorrow or within years or within a few years, it is not the case. For longer term there must be a like that kind of engagement. And of course, like while talking about the close bordering areas, people relations from the county side on the China side and the village or the rural municipalities on the Nepal side, they have been working very closely. I have seen that some reports and some news are coming, and in the 15 bordering districts, these like adjoined countries, they have been directly supporting some development and some logistic and some like the other support and cooperation. So that must be like well handled, better channelized, better managed by Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And if needed, then like the interministerial coordination and bilateral coordination mechanism must be looking on all these issues. And finally, what I think is like what the report or I haven't seen that report, but the media reports and the people are talking in media, the missing pillar is a big dispute there in living. But some said it's missing, and at the same time, some said no, the pillar is found somewhere else or something like that. So that particular issue should not, hamper or make any hassle in the relations. And at the and finally, what I want to say is if this is a series of discussions or something like that, we must focus on some particular area of the sectoral discussions in the Nepal-China or the bilateral relations. So that is one suggestion from my side, and this is a good initiative in the sense very rarely we see this kind of platform is created in the recent couple of years. I haven't seen this kind of discussion or this kind of forum are created. So I want to congratulate again the organizers. So I will stop here. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Vijay.
Thank you, Honorable Dr. Bhatta. Your kind remarks. You are very rightly said that one important thing that we have a set mechanism of sorting out all the issues. This is a huge instrument we have signed from 1956 to till date, and even during the visit of President Xi, we have signed MOU and many issues mentioned there. So one important thing what Ajay told, when I was talking about the Trans-Himalayan Association people, they were very reluctant to speak on phone. When I met them, and then they shared their pain since almost 7 years in Tatopani and almost 2 years from Raswagadi. It's almost a very difficult state for the traders, business people. And one important, roughly estimated, when this in 2020, January, when Tatopani, Raswagadi was stopped, almost more than 1,000 containers were in the queue from different parts of China heading to Nepal. So all these containers were rerouted from Raswagadi to Calcutta ports. So it's a huge investment, roughly estimated. When the Sarda was doing research, some of the business people said that we spend around 1 million Nepali rupees for rerouting the coast for the freight. Thank you, Dr. Bhatta, and we are expecting very soon that your committee will come up with some good suggestion on the new foreign policy, which the Ministry of Foreign Affairs initiated and your committee has initiated too. So now on the panelists at the end, now I would like to request Honorable Dibya Rajbhandari ji to kindly provide his comments and opinion on the topics. So now the floor is yours, Honorable Member of Parliament, Mr. Bhandari.
Mute. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Namaste to everyone. Thank you very much to CSIF, Mr. Kana, to giving an opportunity to me to speak and give my comment on this occasion. Since all of us are Nepali, and I think the communication and delivering in Nepali language will be much more better and understanding to all of us. I'll request Mr. Karna to allow me to speak in Nepal.
Yes, एकदमै हजुर म सुरुमै भन्न चाहन्थे
धन्यवाद छ किनभनेदेखि हामी अरु भाषामा बोल्दा एक्सप्रेसन पावर भनाइको पावर र कुरा गर्दाखेरि फरक पर्ने भएको हुनाले यसैमा गर्दाखेरि अन्डरस्ट्यान्डिङ बुझ्न सकोस् भन्ने राम्रो भएको हुनाले म गर्न चाहन्छु। अब यो सब्जेक्टमा हामीले कुरा गर्दा मेरो मुख्य कुरा चाहिँ के भनाइ छ भने जुन पेपर प्रेजेन्टेसन गर्यो र पेपरको निष्कर्षहरुमा जुन आएको छ र जुन रेकमेन्डेसन्सहरु गएको छ त्यस सम्बन्धमा नै म केन्द्रित गर्न चाहन्छु र साथै पूर्ववक्ता विद्वान मित्रहरूले जुन बताइरहनु भएको छ त्यो कुरालाई म रिपिट गर्न चाहन्न तर एउटा कुरा के छ भने जब हामी नेपाल भारत र नेपाल चाइनासँगको क्रस बोर्डरको बारेको समस्याहरू र हाम्रा सहुलियतहरू र हाम्रा ट्रेडिसनहरुको कुरा गर्दाखेरि हामी बहुत संवेदनशील भइकन हामीले सोच्नुपर्छ किनभनेदेखि हामीले सेमिनारहरुमा कुरा गर्दा आफ्ना भावनाहरू आफ्नो किसिमले र आफूले बुझेका कुराहरू आफ्नो किसिमले बोक्दा एक अर्कोमा के असर पर्छ भन्ने कुरा पनि हामीले सोच्नुपर्छ र जबसम्म मलाई के लाग्छ भने नेपाल चाइनाको यो क्रस बोर्डरको सबै समस्याहरूको हेर्दाखेरि हामीले इतिहास हेर्दाखेरि लिच्छवी कालदेखिका नेपालका चाइनाका त्यो बेलाको टिबेटसँगको हाम्रा सम्बन्धहरू हाम्रा ट्रेडहरू हाम्रा आपसी झगडा हाम्रा आपसी मिल्ती सबै चिजहरूले हामीले हेर्दाखेरि हामी भ्रिकुटी र हामी अर्निको पालोदेखिको हामी कहाँ चाहिँ आएको मञ्जुश्रीको पालोदेखिका सबै कुराहरू हामीले हेर्दाखेरि हाम्रो आफ्नै किसिमका सम्बन्धहरू छ र धेरै कालसम्म मल्लकालीनहरूसम्म समयहरूमा पनि जुन हाम्रा व्यापारीहरू हाम्रा नेपाली नागरिकहरू टिबेटमा गएर जुन तरिकाले व्यापार लगानीहरू गरेको त्यसको आफ्नै विशेषता र सम्बन्धहरू छ त्यही ट्रेडिसन आउँदा आउँदा अलि पछि गइकन आउँदा आउँदा हाम्रा जुन प्रकारका पुरानो सम्बन्धहरू छ त्यही किसिमका हुन नसकेकोहरू चिजहरू देखिन्छ अब अहिलेको क्रस बोर्डरको सम्बन्धमा तपाईको संस्थाले स्टडी गर्नुभएको चिज म्याडम घिमिरेजीले अहिले एक्सप्रेस गर्नुभयो अरू मित्रहरूले आफूलाई राख्नुभएको कुरामा मैले देख्दाखेरि मलाई के लाग्छ भने अहिले हाम्रो समस्या जुन एउटा 5 वटा जिल्ला कि 6 वटा जिल्लामा यहाँहरूले स्टडी गरेर बताउनु भएको छ त्यसमा मात्रै नभइकन मलाई लाग्छ ओलाङचु गोला ताप्लेजुङ सङ्खुवा सभा दोलखा सिन्धुपाल्चोक र रसुवागढीको कुरा त हो तर मनाङ गोर्खा मुस्ताङ डोल्पा मुगु हुम्ला बजाङ र दार्चुलासम्मको सबै एरियाहरूमा आफ्नो आफ्नो किसिमका समस्याहरू देखिएको छ समस्याहरूलाई हल गर्नको निम्ति हामीले कोसिस गर्नुपर्नेछ एउटा हाम्रो समस्या चाहिँ मानव अधिकारको कुरा छ तस्करीको कुरा छ यौन हिंसाको कुराहरू छ भनेदेखि किसिम किसिमका त्यस ठाउँका कल्चरल अन्डरस्ट्यान्डिङका हाम्रा समस्याहरू त्यहाँ भएका चाहिँ हामीलाई डोमिनेसनका कुराहरू र त्यस ठाउँमा भएका समस्याहरूलाई हाम्रा सरकारहरूले के कति हेर्नु सकेन भन्ने कुरा पनि हामीले सोच्नुपर्ने छ मलाई लाग्छ आजको यस छलफलमा हाम्रा बोर्डर एरियाका नेताहरू जस्तै विशेष गरी कर्णालीका हाम्रो चक्रबहादुर साईजी हाम्रा मोहन बानियाजीहरू पनि इन्भल्भ हुनुभएका साँच्चैजीहरू पनि इन्भल्भ हुनुभएको भए र अरू कतिपय मित्रहरू यसमा इन्भल्भ हुनुभएको भए उहाँहरूले व्यवहारिकतामा देखिएका समस्याहरूको बारेमा धेरै चिज भन्न सक्नुहुन्थ्यो होला किनभने अहिले यो क्रस बोर्डरको कुरा गर्दा म ओभरअल चाइनाले नेपालमा कुन कुन क्षेत्रमा कहाँ लगानी गर्यो र बोर्डर एरियामा देखिएकोमा भारत र अमेरिकाहरूले कुन कुन हाइड्रो पावर प्रोजेक्ट अरू कुन कुन प्रोजेक्टमा लगानी गर्यो त्यसले गर्दाखेरि सुरक्षाको कुराहरू आउँदा र जुन चाइनाको नेपालमा लगानीको बढ्दो लगानी भनेको हामी एफडीआई भन्छौँ एफडीआई को लगानी ल हाम्रो ट्रेड को कुरा अहिले डाक्टर वाग्लेले भन्नुभएको छ कि हामी चाहिँ यति हाम्रो चाहिँ बायोलेटरल ट्रेडमा हामी खस्केको छौँ एकातिर हाम्रो 2 बिलियनको एक्सपोर्ट छ भने हामी 200 बिलियनको इम्पोर्टको कुरा गर्छौँ हेर्नु अनि यी सबै समस्याहरूलाई समाधान गर्नको निम्ति चाहिँ हामीले यो क्रस बोर्डरको कुराले मात्रै सीमित हुन्छ जस्तो मलाई लाग्दैन तर क्रस बोर्डरको हाम्रो पुरानो ट्रेडिसनको हिसाबहरूले कुरा गर्दाखेरि पनि कतिपय पुरानो बोर्डरहरूमा एउटा समय र परिस्थिति र तपाईको वेदर वाइज को टाइममा ट्रेडिसनली सिजनल वाइज हुने पुरानो भन्सारहरूको चाहिँ बन्द भइसकेका समस्याहरू देखिन्छ भनिसकेपछि कतिपय हाम्रा पुरानो तरिकाले हामीले चाहिँ ट्रेडिसन भएको कुरामा समस्या देखिन्छ उतातिर समय समयमा चाहिँ हाम्रा हाट बजार हाम्रा सृष्टिहरूमा टिबेटतिरको साइडहरू आएर हामी माथि भएको आक्रमण गर्नेहरू कुरा गर्छन् शोषणका कुराहरू गर्छन् भनेदेखि हाम्रा व्यक्तिहरू पटक पटक चाहिँ टिबेटतिर गएर चाहिँ जडीबुटीको चाहिँ उखलन गरेर ल्याउने गरेको प्रयास भएको कुराहरूको पनि हामी कहाँ सुन्न आइरहेको छ त्यस कारणले यो अर्को तपाईको चरिचलान समस्याहरू यसमा भएका झगडाहरूको कुरामा पनि हामीले चाहिँ आएर चाहिँ समस्याहरू भएकोहरूले देख्छौँ र यो तपाईहरुको स्टडी गर्नुभएको कुराबाट र निष्कर्षमा देखाएका कुराहरू र चाहिँ हाम्रो जुन एकछिन समस्या छ जुन हामीले नेपालले यो सहायता लिने चाहे चीनसँग होस् चाहे भारतसँग होस् सबैसँग चाहिँ सहायता लिने कुरामा हाम्रो बोर्डर क्रस बोर्डरको समस्याहरूमा पनि आएका समस्याहरू भएको पनि हामीले विद्युत स्टडी गर्नुपर्ने छ जस्तो लाग्छ र अहिले यहाँको स्टडीले देखाएको कुराहरू भन्दा अरु समस्याहरू यो चीजहरुमा देखिएको र अहिलेको अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय दृष्टिकोणमा एकातिर एमसीसी को कुरा गर्छ 100 BRI को कुरा गर्छ भने BRI को कुरा गर्दाखेरि पनि कतिवटा हाम्रो एग्रीमेन्ट भएको छ भने त्यसको कार्यान्वयन हुन सकेको नसकेको कुराहरुमा हामीले चाहिँ सोध्नुपर्छ भने आज भूकम्प पछि र कोभिड पछिको पिरियडमा टिबेट बोर्डरसँग हाम्रो जुन सामान आवत जावत गर्ने हाम्रो ट्रान्सपोर्टेसनको कुरा र हाम्रो ट्रेडको कुरामा जुन नेपालले भोग्नु परेको छ अघि पूर्ववक्ता साथीहरूले भन्नुभयो कति हाम्रा मालहरू सड्यो कति समयमा आउन सकेन त्यसले गरेका भोगेका कुराहरूलाई पनि कसरी समाधानसँग हामी जान सक्नुपर्छ सकिन्छ भन्ने कुरामा पनि हामीले स्टडी गर्न सक्नुपर्छ र त्यस भएका जनताहरूलाई जुन दुःख मर्म परेको छ जुन शताब्दीदेखि एक अर्कोको तिर हाम्रो धेरै किसिमका सम्बन्ध भएका कुराहरूलाई अहिलेको यो नयाँ युगमा नयाँ तरिकाले गर्दा र भेगेका अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय अवस्थाले गर्दा त्यो भेगेका जनताले भोगेका कुराहरूलाई पनि हामीले ध्यान पुर्याएर स्टडी गर्नुपर्छ जस्तो मलाई लाग्छ र यो सम्बन्धमा हामीले एउटा जुन यौन हिंसा मानव बेचबिखनका कुराहरूको जुन देखिएको छ योलाई एकदम व्यापार अरु सम्बन्ध भन्दा पनि जुन जनताको अधिकारको कुरा हाम्रो मानव अधिकारपट्टि परेको समस्याको निम्ति हामीले के कस्ता छ त्यसलाई ठोस रूपले लिएर I mean we must be able to give the evidence we have to show how our people are suffering and we should be able to discuss with those people on this issue त्यसकारणले गर्दाखेरि मलाई के लाग्छ भने हामीले बनाउने अबको रणनीतिका कुराहरू अहिले हामीले देखेका चीनसँग र यो बोर्डरसँगको समस्यालाई लिएर बस्ने कुराहरूमा हामी बहुत संवेदनशील भएर हामीले अझ बेसी स्टडी गरेर अहिले देखेका 5 वटा जिल्लाहरूमा यहाँले 6 वटा जिल्लामा जो स्टडी गर्नुभएको छ त्यस बाहेक पनि अरु जिल्लाहरूमा जुन हामीले हुम्लाको कुराहरू सुन्यौं जुम्लामा भएको देखिएका कुराहरू छ भने मुगु र तपाईको जुम्लातिर र डोल्पाको कुराहरूमा पनि धेरै कुराहरू आइरहेको छ भने त्यस बारेहरूमा पनि हामीले स्टडी गरेर अगाडि बढ्नुपर्छ जस्तो लाग्छ त्यसैले हामीले अब अरु वक्ताहरू पनि धेरै हुनुहुन्छ त्यसैले हामीले समय कुलमा यी समस्याहरू हल गर्ने र अर्को कुरा हामीलाई बहुत जरुरी के छ हामीले रिजनल हाम्रो पिस र रिजनली आफ्नो सेफ्टी र रिजनली आर्थिक दृष्टिकोणले चाहिँ हामी अगाडि बढ्नको निम्ति हामीले धेरै टाढाको कुरा गर्नुको सट्टा नेपाल भारत र चीनको चाहिँ आपसी सिक्युरिटीको कुरा आपसी आर्थिक उन्नतिका कुरा र यो रिजनमा भएका हाम्रो शताब्दीदेखिको हाम्रो राम्रो सम्बन्ध र रिलेसन भएका नाता भएका यी सबै चिजलाई एक ठाउँमा ल्याएर हाम्रो कसरी चाहिँ यस एरियाका मानव जातिका विकासको कुरा, यस जाति यस एरियाका चीन, भारत र नेपालका जनताहरूको सुरक्षाको कुरा, उन्नतिको कुरा र सुखी कसरी बनाउन सक्छ भन्ने कुरामा हामी स्टडी गर्नुपर्छ र कसरी सबै तिनै पक्षलाई एक ठाउँ राखेर हामी अगाडि बढ्नुपर्छ भन्ने कुरामा पनि हामीले लाग्नुपर्छ भन्ने कुरा मलाई लाग्छ र यस संस्थालाई यो बारेमा पनि स्टडी गर्न र बाँकी अरू विज्ञहरू जनप्रतिनिधिहरूसँग पनि यस बारेमा राम्रोसँग जब यो कोभिडको पिरियड पोस्ट कोभिड सिद्धिसकेपछि हामी चाहिँ भर्चुअल सट्टा चाहिँ हामीसँगै राखेर बसेर चाहिँ छलफल गर्न सक्छौँ, हामी विभिन्न क्षेत्रहरूमा गएर चाहिँ छलफल गर्न सक्छौँ। त्यो चिज गर्नको पनि म अनुरोध गर्दै मेरा कुराहरू यहाँ टुङ्ग्याउन चाहन्छु। धन्यवाद, नमस्कार।
धन्यवाद माननीय दिव्य राजभण्डारी जी, बहुत बहुत रिमार्केबल सजेसन्सहरू यहाँले दिनुभयो र यहाँले भन्नुभएको एक दुईवटा कुरो म सेयर गर्न चाहन्छु। हामी फेब्रुअरी 2021 मा हुम्लासँग जोडिएका विषयमा माननीय अहिले मुख्यमन्त्री हुनुभयो, त्यो बेलामा विपक्षी दलको नेता हुनुहुन्थ्यो कर्णाली प्रदेशको माननीय जीवन बहादुर शाहीजी लगायत हामीले सर्वे डिपार्टमेन्टका एक्सपर्टहरूलाई बोलाएर हामी त्यो हुम्लाको बारेमा छलफल गरेका थियौँ र त्यो कुराहरू पनि हाम्रो यो रिपोर्टमा आउँछ। मैले जानकारी हामीले अहिले चाहिँ यो वास्तवमा यो प्रोग्राम हामीले फिजिकल गर्न खोजेको छौँ। जनवरीको फर्स्ट विकमा डिसाइडेड टु डु इट अन 28th of January भनेर हामी चाहिँ 2-3 तारिकमा निर्णय गरेका थियौँ, तर ड्यु टु कोभिड र सरकारको विभिन्न उहरूले गर्दाखेरि हामीले यो गर्न सकेनौँ। सायद फिजिकल गरे भए अझ बढी डिस्कसन र हुन पाउँथ्यो कि भन्ने लागेको छ हामीलाई। त्यसको लागि अब हामी यो परिस्थितिले गर्दाखेरि यो गर्नु पुगेका छौँ। जहाँसम्म हजुरले ट्रेडको बारेमा भन्नुभयो, त्यो हाम्रो अर्को एउटा रिसर्च गर्दैछौँ एन्ड सी इज डुइङ द सेम रिसर्च इज being done by Sarda again. Sarda is working on it about this railway as well as trade transit को agreement को बारेमा हामी अर्को रिपोर्ट छ हाम्रो। हामी अलिक दिन पछि त्यसमा फेरि छलफल गर्न यहाँ सबैलाई निम्ता दिन्छौँ। र before we proceed to answer of the questions raised here, Avasana Pandey ji would like to share some of his remarks. So please, Avasana ji, go ahead.
Thank you again. It's really exciting to hear all these comments from everyone. It's actually very enriching because we have so many people from all walks of life here. I just had like one question because I do not know the answer to this question myself, and I thought maybe somebody here could help me. Like Shraddha mentioned in her report that Nepal is usually reluctant to talk about border issues with China, right? That we usually like China says that there are no border issues with Nepal, and Nepal says the same thing, right? Most of the time we're not really acknowledging that we have a border issue, right? I want to know why aren't we doing it, right? Especially because we have people from we have members of the parliament here, right? Maybe they could help me know the answer to this question. Is it because, we have already a long outstanding border issue with India already, right? So there are multiple inflections there already. And because we already have a big problem at hand and we're also having some border issues with China, why aren't we like acknowledging the way we bring out border issues with India? Why aren't we doing the same when it comes to China? Is it because we already have a bigger problem at hand, which is our border issue with India? That's why we're not trying to acknowledge our border issue with China, because maybe, I don't know, maybe is what is the thought of the government or like, people who hold political offices? Is it that we want to solve one kind of problem that we have with India first before we go on to acknowledge our problem with China? Why is it that we do not, speak about it as much as we talk about our problem with India? I just want to know an answer to that if anybody can give me.
Would you like to answer the Avasana ji question?
I think I want to thank Avasana for putting this very pertinent question. And the reason why much of this was not divulged in our research was because I myself am looking for the same answer. Because the issues, any issues that Nepal has with India, it is explored so vastly and it's explored by many people of our society. But the thing with China is if there's any issue that rises, the government always downplays it. And from China, the only thing that we hear is that no, there's no issues, there's no issues. Nepal and China, we always have had a good friendship, we have a good relationship. So I think I also am seeking for the answer of this question. And if anybody here can help me and Avasana, I think that would be amazing.
With two members of parliament who are the member of Foreign Affairs Committee too. So expecting Dibya Rajbhandari ji, Manya ji, यो प्रश्न आवासना र श्रद्धाको केही भन्नुहुन्छ हजुरले हामी चीनसँगको बोर्डर इस्युमा किन छलफल गर्दैनौं किन कुरा गर्दैनौं माननीय दिव्यराज भण्डारी जी हजुर अनम्युट गर्नु पर्यो हजुर अनम्युट गर्दिनुस्
अहिले सुन्नुभयो
सुनियो सुनियो
ओके धन्यवाद हाम्रो म्याडम सरलाई सोध्नु भएको क्वेशन सरमा मुख्य कुरा हामी सबै छलफल गर्छौं तर अहिलेको परिस्थितिमा र अहिले देखेको कुरा र तपाईहरुले गर्नुभएको स्टडीको रिपोर्ट र प्रेजेन्टेसनको कुरामा क्रस बोर्डरको समस्याको कुराको छ र यो क्रस बोर्डरको ओभरअल समस्या लाई कसरी हल गर्ने कुरामा मात्र म सीमित हुन चाहेको छु हेर्नुस् अहिले अब तपाईहरुले डिफरेन्ट चाहिँ बीआरआई र बीआरआई एमसीसी अथवा तपाईको अहिलेको रिजनल र तपाईको इन्टरनेशनल पोलिटिक्सको कुरामा कसरी कुन देशसँग रोल हुनु छ नेपाल भारत र नेपाल चीनसँगको सम्बन्ध भारत र चीनसँगको सम्बन्धको कुरामा हाम्रो के रोल हुन्छ त्यो सेपरेटली हुन्छ भने आफ्नो ठाउँमा छ तर मैले नेपाल भारत चीनसँगको कुरा गर्दा अहिलेलाई हामीले रिजनलमा हामी तिनै देशको सिक्युरिटी तिनै देशको हाम्रो आर्थिक उन्नति र तिनै देशको जनताको सुखीको कुराको निम्ति हामी तिनै देशकोहरु चाहिँ हामी मिलेर बस्न सक्यौं भने र अगाडि बढाउन सक्यौं भने देश बढ्न सक्छ यसमा मैले तपाईहरुलाई पुर्खौली हाम्रो सिद्धान्त पनि दिन्छौं सिद्धान्त दिन्छौं र जब हाम्रो मल्लकालीन टाइमसम्म पनि नेपाल भारत चीनसँगको हाम्रो सम्बन्ध हाम्रो ट्रेड र यो कारणले हाम्रो चाहिँ जुन उन्नति यो देशमा भएको थियो त्यो देशको उन्नतिको कुरा नेपालको काठमाडौँको चाहिँ मठ मन्दिरबाट नै देखिन्छ when we were making a good business when we were making a lot of profit we had started investing in those days on the culture itself त्यसले गर्दा के लाग्छ भने जबसम्म मेरो व्यक्तिगत विचारमा र मेरो आफूले गरेको स्टडीको कुरामा के छ भने हामी आफै बोर्डरमा भएको र नेपालको अस्तित्व र नेपालको उन्नतिको निम्ति हामीसँग दुईटा बोर्डर एउटा चीनसँगको र एउटा भारतसँगको भएकोमा यी सबै क्षेत्रलाई हामीले चाहिँ सम्हाल्न सक्यौं र हामीले अगाडि बढाउन सक्यौं र दुई तिनै देशभित्र राम्रोसँग अन्डरस्ट्यान्डिङ गर्न सक्यौं भनेदेखि हाम्रो उन्नति हुन्छ भन्ने कुराले मैले त्यो कुरा थपेको हुँ तर जहाँसम्म हामीले क्रस बोर्डरको समस्याहरु हेर्दा हेर्नुस् हामी हाम्रो चीनसँग सँगसँगैको आज हामी छलफल गर्दै छौं भने भारतसँग पनि हाम्रो धेरै ठाउँमा समस्या छ हेर्नुस् तपाईलाई चाहिँ पूर्वमा पशुपति नगरमा चाहिँ तपाईको 4 रोपनीको जग्गाको देखि लिएर हाम्रो चाहिँ लिपुलेन सुस्ता र लिपुलेनसँगको ठूलो समस्या पनि हामीले भोगिरहेका छौं त्यसले यस्ता समस्याहरु आपसी छलफल आपसी लेनदेन आपसी अन्डरस्ट्यान्डिङबाट चाहिँ हामीले गर्न सक्नुपर्छ र अहिले हामीले देखेको जुन पूर्वसँगको अहिले अघि वाग्लेजीले भन्नुभयो नेपाल सरकारको परराष्ट्र मन्त्रालयले एउटा विज्ञप्ति दिन्छ चीनी एम्बेसीहरुले आफ्नो एउटा विज्ञप्ति दिन्छ तर व्यवहारिकतामा हेर्दाखेरि यही रिपोर्टले पनि कति ठाउँ समस्या भएको छ भन्ने देखेको छ भने अघि नै कर्णजीले कुरा गर्नुभएको माननीय मुख्यमन्त्री जीवन साईसँगको कर्णालीको सम्बन्धमा त्यो यस एरियाको सम्बन्धमा भएका छलफलहरुमा र देखेका समस्याको कुराहरु पनि आएको छ भन्नुभएको छ त्यसैले गर्दा मलाई के लाग्छ भने यी विषयहरुमा हामीले अर्को बृहत छलफल र एक्सपर्ट्सहरूले चाहिँ स्टडी गर्नुभइकन फेरि हामी चाहिँ यस्ता सेमिनारहरू कुरा गरेर चाहिँ सेमिनारहरूमा हामीले छलफल गरेर अगाडि बढ्नुपर्छ लाग्छ र राजनीतिक दृष्टिकोणबाट म के चाहन्छु भने हाम्रा समिति अन्तर्राष्ट्रिय समितिहरू संसदहरू र सरकारहरूले पनि यस्ता स्टडीहरूलाई चाहिँ ध्यान दिएर सिरियसनेस देखाएर योबाट उब्जेका कुराहरू र योबाट दिएका निष्कर्षको निम्ति र सिफारिस गरेका कुराहरूलाई हामीले अनुसरण गरेर कसरी चाहिँ अगाडि बढ्नु भन्ने कुरामा चाहिँ हामी जानुपर्छ जस्तो मलाई लाग्छ। धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद माननीय राजभण्डारीजी। म यसबारेमा केही कुरो यो किन हामी उत्तरतिरको विषयमा धेरै छलफल गर्दैनौँ, उहाँ एकाडेमिक्स पनि हो र उहाँ सेक्युरिटी र के अरे बारेको एक्सपर्ट पनि हो। माननीय दीपक प्रकाश भट्टज्यू केही प्रकाश पारिदिनुहुन्छ। Avasana and two young scholar has a serious question over politicians as well as bureaucrats and diplomats. माननीय दीपक प्रकाश भट्ट।
के हो? हेलो, खै यसो ल्याउनु। ए हेर त यो हेर त हो। हेलो
हेलो हजुर।
डाक्टर साहब म बिदा भएँ है, मेरो अर्को मिटिङमा छ, जानु छ।
हस् हस्, धन्यवाद हजुरलाई बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। माननीय दीपक प्रकाश भट्ट हुनुहुन्छ? केही प्रश्नहरू दिएको छन्। अजयजी
नमस्ते।
अजयजी।
हजुर नमस्कार।
केही प्रश्नहरू छन् यसमध्ये तपाईँ केही?
मलाई लाग्छ यो प्रश्नहरूमा जस्तै यो अहिलेको प्रश्न चाहिँ अब त्यसको उत्तर मसँग पनि छैन। मैले चाहिँ यो फियर फ्याक्टर एउटा नयाँ एलिमेन्ट भएको हुनाले चाइनासँग जसरी इन्डियासँग हामी नहिचकिचाइकन इन्डियालाई गाली गर्न सक्छौँ त्यो प्रकारले चीनसँग सक्दैनौँ। एउटा त्यसको साइकोलोजिकल फ्याक्टर्सहरू र डिप्लोमेसीको नेचर, जुन चाइनाको डिप्लोमेसी र नेपालको डिप्लोमेसीको जुन नेचर छ त्यो कारणले गर्दाखेरि पब्लिकसम्म, पब्लिक साइकोलोजीसम्म एउटा प्रभाव परेको छ जस्तो लाग्छ मलाई यस विषयमा। एन्ड देन देयर आर सम अदर क्वेसन्स अराउन्ड whether BBIN is more attractive than BRI. So I think in our case, BRI is attractive because of the dreams of infrastructure, but BBIN could be more practical, although at present it is just it's also just another dream. It's just about talks. So, but there are other people who may be able to better answer that question. So back to you, Vijayji.
Can I just ask a follow-up question? Yeah, I don't know who can answer this, right? Again, just to add to what Ajayji just said, right? It's just my opinion again. Is it because we're so involved with the whole trade aspect with China, right? I think we're caught in between making a choice as to do we talk about trade or do we talk about border, right? When it comes to our reluctance in terms of, calling out border issues with China, is it because we have a choice to make whether to talk about trade or to talk about border, right? Because trade is such an important part of this whole relationship that we have, right, with China. Is it because of that we're reluctant to usually bring up border issues? Could that be one of the reasons?
Okay, Avasana ji, I will try to answer. Yeah. So first, Saurabh Pantjile Bhanubhago just is generalized. No, we have a very, I cannot say that is a comprehensive and included everything in our report, but we have tried our best to visit many of the border and talking with the people across the border. We are not allowed to go other side. And even the government officials who are posted in the border are very reluctant to speak. Whenever we speak to the CDOs or the security officials, they are very reluctant, and they said that myself persuaded many of the CDOs and police superintendent of the northern border to please speak with us. We will keep your name off the record then only. However, we have done another research on the India border where our CDOs, our police officials were very freely speaking, and even the border people are speaking their problems, whatever the issues of smuggling and whatever issues, there are a lot of issues it's come up. We will share that report also with you. So now I have seen, so this is a very good question, Avasana ji, to our politician, to our civil society, academics. So to answer this question, actually what I found that, as earlier our Honorable Member of Parliament, Dr. Bhatt said, that more discussion is required on all these issues. We have today invited Embassy of China to participate in our discussion. We have been trying to reach Chinese embassy since long time, but there is no response from that side. That is our big problem. Even I asked some of our colleagues who have been already ambassador in China to help us in this regard, but yet not I'm succeeded. We are not yet succeeded to talk to the Chinese embassy and any authorities from China on all these issues. But we have recently seen that the Chinese embassy's spokesperson has a statement in the media about the border issues. The same thing happened when Chief Minister Jivan Bahadur Shahi in October, November 2020, he brought the things on the floor, and there was very few people to speak on it. And so it is now I can say that we have started, and many more organizations, even your department, the Department of International Relations, will come up with the discussion on all these issues, and we can collaborate with that one. Atul ji, you have raised the question of BBIN. We are the member of BBIN, and we are member of the BMSTEC both. So the BRI is equally important for us because of the infrastructure, but we are very reluctant, and we are very careful about the, as you mentioned, in Sri Lanka and other parts of the debt trap. So we are very much concerned about our economy, our geopolitical condition. So that's why we want BRI on the only thing that we are trying to negotiate with the China on this issue, and we are yet not succeeded on this. And other things that many of the projects under BRI yet not materialized, and there is no agreement on the BRI at the moment, any project. So it is on the table in China as well as in Nepal. Ram Babuji, you have raised the question of the China aggressive posture. Look, I cannot say that the aggressive posture on that one, but we are trying. The China is declining to admit the border issues. This is the big question at the moment. However, the government report of the Home Ministry report very clearly said that there is encroachment. And when the commission constituted by the present government visited in that area, many of the local raised this issue. Then there is a question from, any question? Ram Babuji, can you use this chat, please, to raise your question, please? And then Saurabh Pantji, can you please raise write question on this? So we would love to answer your question. And at the, I'm coming to the Honorable Member of Parliament, Dr. Bhatta. Again, Dr. Bhatta, we have a question from the two young scholars, Avasana Pandey and Shraddha Khimre, who are politicians as well as the bureaucrats and diplomats, that why we are reluctant to discuss issues with China, either border or the trade. Please.
Okay.
Can I just add
Thank-
something here? Can I just say something before you go on to answer? Because for me, as an academician, I really wanted to understand this question, right? And the way I saw it was we're reluctant to address our border issues with China because we already have a bigger border issue with India, right? And because there are multiple inflection points in our border issues with India, we want to have that solved first before we go on to another problem, which is China, right? Because so if you look at it like this, India's border problem is a bigger border problem that we have than with China, right? So because we have a bigger problem at hand, is that why we're trying to sort of ignore the border issue we have with China? I mean, that's the way I have understood it until now. Could you please tell me if I'm right or wrong?
Dr. Bhatta.
Okay. Thank you, Avasana, and thank you, Shraddha, for raising this question. But I have seen, the whole the international relations or the foreign policy or the Nepal's bilateral relations. It is, like if you look at the long ongoing process, as like the organism as a nation, it works. It has limited access, limited, because of terrain, because of geographical, like the conditions and mobility of the people on the both the sides, and economic activities, cultural, religious, and like the cross-border activities. It is limited. And above than that, if you look, like why people are less interacting, of course, because the linguistic problem, because the cultural problem, because of the civilizational problem. So it's already there. So, if you want to break this taboo or break, relations, you need more dynamism in bilateral relations with China than new researchers, youngsters, or the journalists or the activists, whoever is working on the bilateral relations or international relations from Nepal side, have to explore the the new areas. What we have seen that one person who is speaking about the border is labeled as a border expert today, and is speaking, the same person is speaking about the geopolitics next day, and trade on third day, and then similarly, etc. If someone, whoever is talking, is labeled as an expert here, but nobody is working in serious account. As you are in academics, focus yourself. This example, again, an example. One must focus on like some particular areas of bilateral relations. One can work from Nepal regarding what UK's universities or Oxford or for example SUAS or for JNU or for BHU in the past, and now it's less activities in the BHU and Nepal Center also. So how these institutions became like or have emerged as a centers, those who have contributed in bilateral or the multilateral or the particular areas. So that's what we need. As I was mentioning earlier, like in academia, it's widening, the relations are widening. It's just not on academia, but in the journalism, similarly in the political, in the other sectors, similarly. But I don't think that politicians or bureaucrats are like less eager or less interested to talk about bilateral relations, or if someone or whoever is like in the position or are or any individual is less interested or less speaking about, it's because of the, as I mentioned earlier, the reasons are there, but it is not remaining as it's what it was in the past. So now it's changing. So gradually, as all the bilateral relations, it is manifold. So it is changing. That's what I think.
Thank you. Thank you for your
Thank you,
response.
माननीय Prakash भट्टज्यू. उहाँले धेरै इम्पोर्टेन्ट कुराहरू गर्नुभयो कि हाम्रो रिसर्च इन्स्टिट्युसनहरू, युनिभर्सिटी सबैले चाहिँ यस बारेमा हामी कम काम यस बारेमा हाम्रो रिसर्चहरू भएका छैनन्, भर्खर भर्खर केही कुराहरू भइरहेका छन्, बिस्तारै हुन्छ भन्ने चाहिँ म पनि त्यसमा विश्वास राख्छु कि हाम्रा कुराहरू बिस्तारै हुने हुन्छ। अरू कसैको केही क्वेशनहरू छन्? Sumna, Lumna, you have raised a question. Can Avasana ji or Shraddha answer this question? Lumna question. Why are we considering India border issue is greater than that of China?
Vijay sir, can I leave or do I need to answer anything?
Dr. Sahib, एकछिन बस्नुस् न. Yes, I'm coming to you, Dr. Sahib. 2 मिनटमा आउँदैछु म तपाईँ. Avasana ji, are you?
मैले मलाई unmute गर्नुस् नै भनिरहेको थिएँ. Shraddha, would you like to answer this question first, and then maybe I can jump in after you're done?
Yeah, sure. So I really don't think we are considering India's border problems with Nepal greater than that of China. I think what I feel is that maybe because the discourse on Nepal-China dynamics is so less, maybe that's why the topic or the discussion on Nepal's, China's border or cross-border dynamic or trade dynamic, economic dynamic, geopolitical dynamic is not being raised enough. But I really don't think that the problem is less or greater of any margin. That is what I would want to say. And Avasana, if you would like to add on to it now.
Yeah, so what I was actually just trying to say was we're always focusing on our border problems with India, right? So even in international relations, what happens is when you portray an issue repeatedly, that it warrants a lot of attention, and it looks like that issue is more important than the others, right? So that's what we've been doing in a way. So we've in a way been, highlighting so much of our border issues with India that it looks like it's a lot more severe, which it is also, and this is not to deny, right? So I think again, probably it's not right to say that our northern border is more important than a southern border, or a southern border is more important than the northern border, right? Anytime there is a border issue, it needs to be resolved amicably, and then we have to really look into a lot of factors that are involved in any border issue, right? With India, what I was trying to say when I was saying that there are multiple inflection points is because, again, we have porous borders, right? We have the whole citizenship issue that crops up time and again. And then there is a lot of people-to-people interaction that happens as compared to what happens in that southern border, right? So that's why, and again, because India and Nepal have always said that they have this special relationship, right? It kind of complicates relationship between the two. And that's why I think I was just trying to say that, that our issues with India and even the public opinion, right? When it comes to border with India, the public opinion gets swayed much faster than when it comes to border issues with China, right? So our public is more anxious about our relations with India as it is with China, although we're supposed to be equally anxious with our border relationship with both our neighbors, right? But because the way India and Nepal have had the relationship, right? It's a lovely relationship for me, right? We have to have a lot of, we have interconnections with each other, linkages with each other, but even the smallest of things that we do ires one another, right? So because there is this love-hate relationship, and then the public opinion sways much faster than in any other case, that's what I was trying to say, that, when we talk about border relationship with India, we're more vocal about it than with our border relationship with China.
Actually, I'm sorry, Vinod Bhattaraji, for your question. Not at all. I think the Nepal government is very much in the BRI. We are, as per our information and our work, when we interviewed the people in Ministry of Finance, there is nothing moved at the moment. Everything is standstill. There is no discussion on BRI at the moment, but it is yet not unpacked also. So actually, but one important thing, as you said, that about this, our confirmation on the border missing pillar is not our confirmation or our household survey. Actually, it's when we see the report in the media, the Home Ministry report in the media, so we have confirmed through that report. It's not our survey. Although when we surveyed it, our survey also said the same, what it is confirmed by the government report. And yes, you, of course, there is a, when we see that the foreign policy and strategy of the China towards South Asia, we find that the very active and aggressive diplomacy as well as policies towards the reaching to the South Asian countries by the China recently. Last 5-6 years, we have seen that the China is very active in South Asian countries, the Quad, and many discussion on it. But it is not in the beyond our, I mean, the research. So we didn't. But we are trying to. We have coming up very soon our research on the Chinese engagement in Nepal, which is already completed, and the book is coming in a month to the market. So I think many of your questions answered in that book also. Yes, everybody said that Avasana ji were right that said that we have a very good friendly relation with both China and India, and we wanted to solve all our problems amicably. We have many mechanism to border regulation, border management, smuggling. There are many instruments with the India as well as with the China. We have several instruments. We have signed trade and transit agreement recently, or the protocol has been signed, and the very highest level. Although it is not materialized at the moment, but the president of China, president of Nepal, during their visit, both the agreement has been signed in Beijing as well as in Kathmandu. So this is very important partner, and China is a very important partner in our development effort and a good friend. So we expecting our border relations, amicable border relations, and even and the problems of the border, missing pillars or any border, should be amicably solved by the China's and Nepalese authority. So, and the same with the India. We have we expecting that India and China, India and Nepal, amicably we have several mechanisms set at the foreign secretary level, at the security survey department level, and many level that and they are communicating each other on the issues of the border as well as many issues. Vijendra Jile. How do we, Vijendra Jile, question, how do we manage and train Nepalese border forces so that they can protect Nepalese citizens inside Nepal's territory in the context of border brutality and by the Chinese forces? Yes, Vijendra ji, this is what we, during our research, when Sardha went to the many of the border areas, and when our other researcher went to the many different parts, we found that when there is a people from outside visited the area, the Chinese police officials come the next to the Nepalese part, why they came, they inquire about the presence, any guest, even the guest from other side, if they come to their own guest, and if the people is the Mongolian origin, then there is a lot of questions asked by the Chinese authority. And our government officials, our security forces are not able to actually stop all these things. So these are the things that not come in the media. So at the end of our report, when your all contribution, so I think that and what's about this? What kind of training? Actually, we are not expert on this this area. So I think that the Nepal government, Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Home, and our intelligence department, our immigration department, they know better and they can train our people. As Sardar mentioned that the BOP should be raised and the other mechanism in the border should be raised because of very difficult terrain in our part. However, in the Chinese part, there are many infrastructure are built in the many of our border. But in our part, we have been neglected these areas since a long time. So that's why first it needs infrastructure investment by the government of Nepal. So, this is beyond our limitation. The answer this whole question to you. But as I mentioned in our research, whatever we found, we say. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for participating. We exceed our time 5 minutes. As Saru said that we are already more than 5 minutes. Thank you, Ambassador Adhikari, Ambassador Lamshal, Ambassador Bhattarai, Ambassador Durgesh Mansingh. I have seen a lot of our former ambassadors who joined us, a lot of intellectuals, journalists, and Atulji, thank you very much. And thank you, Professor Achyut Wagle, and all panelists, Dr. Honorable Member of Parliament, Avasana ji, thank you very much for your nice remarks on this issue. Sardar, thank you very much too also. You have a very good presentation. Thank you, everyone. And now I expecting you to join in our next webinar. Thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you too.
And one thing I would like to share that we will share our report in our website as well as in the media.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Everybody present here.